Let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this before you scroll past, before your brain tries to protect you from the answer. When was the last time you felt like you were actually in control of your life? Not just managing it, not just surviving the week. I mean genuinely, deeply in the driver's seat, steering towards something that set your soul on fire. If you had to pause before answering that, this video is for you. My name doesn't matter as much as what I'm about to say to you. Because the truth is, most people are living somebody else's life. They're running somebody else's script. They wake up, they check their phone before they check in with themselves. They react to the world before they've even decided who they want to be that day. And then they wonder at 40, at 50, at the end of a Sunday night when dread sets in, why nothing feels like theirs. I've been in that place. I've sat in that silence where you realize that the life around you looks fine on paper and feels absolutely hollow on the inside. And I made a decision, not a vision board decision, not a new year, new me decision. A real bone deep, I am done with this decision. And that decision changed everything. So here's my question for you, and I genuinely want you to answer this in the comments below. What is the one area of your life where you feel the least amount of control right now? Is it your health, your money, your relationships, your mental state? Drop it below, because I'm going to be reading those comments, and what you write might just be the thing someone else needed to see to feel less alone in their own struggle. Now let's get into it, because dominating your life is not what most motivational content tells you it is. The word dominate gets misused. People hear it and they think aggression, they think brute force, they think grinding until your knuckles bleed and your body gives out. But that's not dominance, that's desperation, wearing a hustle culture costume. Real dominance is something quieter, something sharper. It's the ability to be so deeply aligned with your own values, your own vision, and your own discipline that the chaos around you stops dictating who you are. Here's a fact that very few people talk about. The average person makes approximately 35,000 decisions a day. 35,000. And the vast majority of those decisions are made unconsciously, driven by habit, by fear, by social conditioning, by patterns installed in us before we were old enough to question them. So when people say, I just can't seem to change, they're not weak, they're unaware. And awareness is the very first weapon in the arsenal of someone who wants to dominate their life. You cannot fight an enemy you haven't named. You cannot rewire a pattern you haven't acknowledged. This is why the first step to taking control is radical, unflinching honesty with yourself. Not the kind of honesty you perform on social media. The kind you have at 2 a.m. when the world is quiet and you're face to face with your own reflection, metaphorically speaking. What are you actually doing with your days? What are you tolerating that you swore you never would? What conversation have you been avoiding for 6 months, 12 months, 3 years? Because here's the brutal truth. The life you're living right now is a direct result of the standards you've been willing to accept. And that's not said to shame you. That is said to empower you. Because if your current reality is a product of your accepted standards, then raising those standards is the single most powerful act you can perform. Let me talk to you about identity, because this is where most personal development content gets it completely wrong. People are told, change your habits and you'll change your life. And while that's partially true, it skips the most important layer. Habits that aren't rooted in a new identity will eventually collapse back into old behavior. You've seen it, you've lived it, you did the diet for 3 weeks, you went to the gym for a month, you journaled every morning for 2 weeks and then stopped. Not because you're lazy, because you were trying to perform a new behavior without becoming a new person first. The question isn't, what do I need to do? The question is, who do I need to become? When you make that shift, when you stop asking what successful people do and start asking who they are, everything changes. A person who identifies as an athlete doesn't debate whether they'll work out today. A person who identifies as a reader picks up a book the same way others pick up their phone. Identity is the operating system. Habits are just the apps running on top of it. So I want you to think right now, who are you trying to become? Not what are you trying to achieve. Who are you trying to become? And here's the follow-up. The harder question, are the decisions you made today consistent with that person? Because if you say you're becoming someone who is financially free, but you spent the day making unconscious purchases and avoiding the hard financial conversations with yourself, then there's a gap between your declared identity and your lived identity. And that gap is where self-betrayal lives. Now I want to address the people who are tired, and I know you're out there, because I was you, the ones who have tried, who have read the books, watched the videos, gone to the seminars, bought the courses, made the vision boards, set the alarms, and still feel stuck. I see you, and I want to say this clearly, you are not broken. You are not beyond repair. But I do want to challenge something. There is a difference between consuming inspiration and building a life. Inspiration without action is just emotional entertainment. It feels good in the moment. It gives you a hit of dopamine, a surge of, I've got this, and then Monday morning arrives and nothing has changed, because the only thing that actually changes your life is doing something differently than you did it before, consistently, repeatedly, in the moments when you don't feel motivated, especially then. Motivation is a wave. It comes and it goes. The people who dominate their lives, the ones who build businesses, deepen relationships, achieve extraordinary physical health, find mental peace, they are not more motivated than you. They are more disciplined than you. And discipline is a skill, not a personality trait. It is built through small, repeated acts of doing what you said you would do, when you said you would do it, regardless of how you feel in that moment. Here's what nobody tells you about discipline. The first few weeks are the hardest and the most critical, because that's when the gap between who you are and who you want to be is most visible, most uncomfortable, most tempting to escape. Most people escape. They reach for the phone, for the snack, for the distraction, for the excuse. But every single time you don't escape, every time you sit in the discomfort and do the thing anyway, you are casting a vote for your new identity. You are literally rewiring your brain. Neuroscience tells us that consistent behaviors change the neural pathways of the brain, strengthening the connections that support those behaviors. You are not just building a habit, you are physically rebuilding yourself. Let's talk about your environment, because this is the most underrated factor in human behavior. You can have the best intentions in the world, and a bad environment will defeat you every single time. Your environment is not just the physical space around you, though that matters enormously. It's the people you spend time with, the content you consume, the conversations you participate in, the social media accounts you follow, the news you absorb, the energy of the spaces you inhabit daily. Jim Rohn said that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I want to take that further. You are the average of every input your mind receives on a daily basis. Every conversation, every piece of content, every environment is feeding your subconscious a diet. And right now, ask yourself honestly, is that diet nutritious or toxic? Are the people around you building you up, challenging you, pushing you toward growth, or are they normalizing mediocrity, complaining without action, and making you feel guilty for wanting more? I'm not here to tell you to cut everyone off. That's not the move. But I am here to tell you that if you want to level up your life, you must be intentional about who and what has access to your mind. That means curating your social media feed with the same intentionality that you curate your diet. That means having honest conversations with the people in your life about where you're going and what you need from those around you. That means investing in rooms, physically or virtually, where the standard of thinking is higher than where you currently are, because humans are deeply social creatures and we rise or fall to the level of our social environment. Here's something I believe with everything I have. Your greatest obstacle is not your circumstances, it's your story about your circumstances. 2 people can go through the exact same hardship, the same bankruptcy, the same broken relationship, the same lost opportunity, and one will use it as evidence that life is against them, while the other will use it as fuel for the version of themselves they're becoming. The difference is not luck, the difference is narrative. The story you tell yourself about what happened to you determines whether you're a victim of your past or the author of your future. And I know some of you have been through things that make it genuinely difficult to think this way. Real trauma, real loss, real systems that were stacked against you before you even had a voice. I am not minimizing that. I am saying that the moment you find, even inside the unfairness, even inside the pain, the slightest thread of agency, you pull on it hard, because that thread is your way out. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps, said that everything can be taken from a person except the freedom to choose one's attitude in any set of circumstances. If that man could find agency in that darkness, then there is agency available to each of us in ours. The story shifts when you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this preparing me for? Not because the world is always fair, it isn't, but because your interpretation of your experience is ultimately the only thing you have total sovereignty over, and sovereignty over your interpretation is the seed of dominating your life. I want to spend a moment on what I call the three pillars of a life dominated, not dominated over others, but dominated by you, for you. These three pillars are clarity, consistency, and courage. Clarity first. You cannot hit a target you cannot see. Most people are living in the fog of vague ambition. They want to be successful or happy or better. Those are not targets. Those are feelings. A target has specificity. It has a deadline. It has a measurable outcome. The people who make extraordinary progress in their lives are not smarter than you. They are clearer than you. They know exactly where they're going, which means every decision they make is filtered through a single question. Does this move me toward that or away from it? That level of clarity is a discipline. You cultivate it by writing things down, by revisiting your vision weekly, by making your goals concrete enough that you would know with certainty whether you achieve them or not. Consistency second. I've already touched on this, but I want to drive it home, because consistency is where dreams die or come alive. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not a talent gap. It is a consistency gap. Talent gets you started. Consistency gets you there. And the reason consistency is so hard is not because the actions themselves are hard. Most of them are remarkably simple. Wake up early, move your body, read for 20 minutes, save a percentage of what you earn, have the hard conversation. These are not complex acts, they're uncomfortable acts. And discomfort, not difficulty, is the real wall between people and the life they want. When you commit to consistency, you are committing to doing the simple, uncomfortable thing over and over again until the uncomfortable becomes ordinary. Courage third. And I'll define courage the way I use it, because I don't mean the dramatic kind. I don't mean running into burning buildings. I mean the everyday micro courage that changes lives. The courage to say no to something that pays well but drains your soul. The courage to start the business before you feel ready. The courage to end the relationship that both of you know is over. The courage to have the conversation that might change everything. The courage to be the first in your family, in your circle, in your neighborhood to reach for something bigger. That is the courage I'm talking about. And it is available to you right now, today, in whatever your next hard decision is. Let's bring this home, because I don't want this to be a video you watched and felt good about. I want this to be a line in the story of your life the moment something shifted. So let me ask you one more time, and this time I want you to be specific. What is the one thing you've been putting off that you know, if you did it, would change your trajectory? Not two things, not a list, one thing. The thing that lives in the back of your mind that you think about when you're honest with yourself, that you've been explaining away, rationalizing, delaying, that thing, name it. Say it out loud right now, wherever you are. Because there is something powerful that happens when you stop keeping that thing a secret from yourself. When you say it aloud, it becomes real. And real things can be dealt with. Real things can be confronted. Real things can be changed. The life you want is not on the other side of some perfect moment. There is no perfect moment. There is no point at which you'll finally feel ready, finally feel qualified, finally have enough time, money, certainty, or confidence to begin. Those things come from doing, not before it. Every person who has built something extraordinary started before they were ready. They started uncomfortable, uncertain, and imperfect. And they started anyway. That is what it means to dominate your life. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to move in spite of it. Not the absence of obstacles, but the refusal to let them become your ceiling. Not the absence of self-doubt, but the discipline to act before the doubt talks you out of it. You are more capable than you are currently behaving. You are more powerful than the story you've been telling. And today, this moment, right now, is as good a place as any to begin the rest of your life. If this hit something in you, if something I said today cracked open a thought you needed, drop a comment below. Tell me what landed. Tell me what area you're going to take back control of first. Subscribe if you want to keep going deeper, because this is just the beginning of a very important conversation. I'll see you in the next one. Go do the work.